That is James Mennie. He is over at the Montreal Gazette. And Jim, I'm not sure we're going to start by talking about this, but thank you for updating me. I wouldn't have seen the story. So for all the talk about the notwithstanding clause, which we haven't talked about, by the way, in a while, now, of course, there's news today from the Quebec Bar Association. So bring everyone up to date. This seems to be a pretty big deal.
Well, it is. And so, well, yeah, it is, because it is, if nothing else, it's a very important reminder about, and you and I have basically been talking about this for the past 8 years, ever since the CAQ got elected, that the idea that you would deliberately pass a law, an illegal law, and protect it with the notwithstanding clause for no other reason than to please your electoral base. And this came up, the bar has filed a brief with the Legislative Committee looking into Bill 9, which is extending the further discriminatory powers of Bill 21, the so-called secularism law. And what they're saying is this, and I think even though, with all due respect to the bar, I think even they know this is going to go nowhere with this government, but at least they're getting it on the record. They're saying you have to adopt a kind of legislative framework to use the notwithstanding clause. You can't turn around and just, pull it out of your pocket like some kind of legislative Pez dispenser and say, okay, we're going to do this and this, and okay, and then we'll invoke closure and everything, because that's exactly how this government has governed, he said, making air quotes, for the past 8 years. But the other thing I found very intriguing as well is they also suggest that any legislation that would require the notwithstanding clause be submitted not for approval, but simply for, how can I put it, examination by the Quebec Court of Appeal, which is the highest court in Quebec, and to take a look at it and really see whether or not, no matter whether it gets adopted or not, whether this law is in fact legally sound, is in fact a law which is going to reinforce rather than erode the public's confidence in the rule of law. Because this is the thing. This is their whole rationale for saying this, Aaron. They're saying, and they're just talking about here and, Ontario, but clearly as well in the United States, we are seeing a complete, a full frontal assault on the rule of law. And this is not a matter of being law. It's just the idea that if you can turn around, make up the rules as you go along, so long as they suit you, yeah, that might work in the political short term, but the fact is the people on the ground, the people who are supposed to be happy with your government, are going to start getting a little fed up or simply not believe in the government. If the government can do whatever it wants, why can't I do whatever I want? It's a logical argument. But I find it intriguing that they're doing this, and I think we cannot be reminded too often, Aaron, of this real cancer which has been spreading through Quebec's body politic for the past 8 years. This idea that, depending on what the headline is, depending on what the columnist was ranting about, let's adopt some legislation that we can throw as a hunk of red meat to our base and make sure that we'll stay in power. And this idea somehow that, the notwithstanding clause, because, we can't have the courts running things. We were elected by the people. We are the product of democracy. Just for those of you still playing along at home in the 2022 election, the CAQ won 90 of the 125 seats in the Quebec National Assembly. That's 72%, and they did it with 41% of the vote.
Yeah. By the way, did I see the number right, Jim? So they have used the notwithstanding clause. Is that in this note 6 times?
Yeah, 6 times. It's amazing. And I think every single time they've done it, they've invoked closure as well.
And
it's just like amazing.
Yeah, I was going to say, then you have to wonder, so we know there's a decision coming down from the Supreme Court with respect to the Bill 21 challenge as well, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So that's due pretty soon, sometime before the end of March.
Listen, if it happens in the spring, as we say in these parts, watch Twitter, because there's going to be a lot of political explosions, metaphorically speaking, and of course the separatists will seize upon this as a full frontal assault. Yeah. By the I guess they'll say the King of England on the sovereignty of the Quebec people, blah 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 blah. And what's really crazy in all of this, here's you and me talking about it, and we should be, okay? But the fact is, whether I'm talking about the Quebec bar going head to head with the Legault government, or right now, the last thing most Quebecers are thinking about is Bill 9, Bill 21, or any of that. And the disconnect more and more is becoming, as for me anyway, I'm finding it increasingly frightening that our so-called ruling classes or our chattering classes can routinely turn around a la Marie Antoinette and ignore all the shambles that's going on around them. And you and I can, and our listeners, we can cite all the usual topics that people are angry about, and we're still having these ridiculously sterile conversations over points of law, over points of sovereignty, over whatever. And we will continue to do so, of course. We're going to see more and more of this as we get closer to Election Day. And I just got to tell you, Aaron, it breaks my heart because once again, here's Quebec losing all kinds of opportunities to move forward. Because why? Because it's more comfortable for certain politicians to stay exactly where they are.
Let's move on to talk about federal politics. Interesting story today, right? All of a sudden, look, the two best friends, that's apparently Mark Carney and Doug Ford, having a meeting and discussing an upcoming, quite potential federal election?
It's so funny because I remember I suggested this last week. I didn't have a chance to get to it. And this was before that Ford and Carney had met. But you know what? This is, once again, another one of my very unscientific assessments, okay? But imagine this. I know you may have had this experience. I'm sure a lot of our listeners, you can go into a bar and everything looks normal, okay? But there's something about the vibe that says, you know what, have one drink and get the hell out because things are going to happen. I'm getting a vibe off of the whole situation right now in Ottawa, whether it's Bill Blair being named High Commissioner and we're going to have a by-election and this and that. The numbers are lining up. The stars, if you will, are lining up for Mark Carney. Certainly his popularity is not being touched thanks to Donald Trump. And to a certain extent, thanks to Pierre Poilievre. And wouldn't it be funny if, because the last election last year was April 28th, wouldn't it be a hoot if the next election is this year on April 27th? Or maybe they want to say, no, we'll wait at least a year, so they'll make it the first week of May. But you know what? I got a feeling he's going to pull the trigger on this, and he's not going to have to deal with any more floor crossings or any more, pearl clutchers saying, this is ridiculous, it's a minority government, what do they think they are? I think he's going to go for it, and I think he's going to win.
It's funny whenever this comes up right now. Of course, the outrage is, do you know how much this is going to cost Canadians? And we just had an election, and at the end of the day, it costs what it costs. And it was funny because I was reading that in Japan over the weekend, their prime minister called a snap election and ended up winning majority. Yep. Now, I'm sure one had nothing to do with the other, but this whole idea of strike while the iron is hot, it does make a lot of sense.
Well, like I say, everything's lining up. And I have got no insight. I'm not an insider, as I keep saying on this show. I have no insight into this, but what I do know is I know how to connect dots. I'm looking at the numbers. I'm looking at the issues. I'm looking at the performance of the opposition parties. I'm looking at the morale of the people within the House of Commons. And first and foremost, I'm looking at Mark Carney. And if he's as smart as he appears to be, he is going to grab that majority sooner rather than later, only because he can proceed in a more efficient, and may I even use that word, banker-like efficiency in terms of governing the government and governing the country, and not, I hate to say it this way, and not having to worry about all kinds of, the ridiculous, it's going to be a matter of confidence in this and that. No more uncertainty. Let's go full speed ahead. Because, and we don't have time for it today, and we'll get to it, but I got to tell you, one of the things I want to talk about, when you talk about getting a trade deal with the United States, just remember, this is a country that had a trauma over a halftime show at the Super Bowl. So good luck getting a deal with the United States, okay?
Fair enough, I think. Jim, before I let you go, I'm asking my question today based on the interview that I had with Bernard Drinville last week. And for people who thought, okay, if François Legault is gone, let's say, and you, by the way, I believe you brought up last week, don't count Bernard Drinville out of this, despite what the early polls say, right?
Yep, absolutely. It's one person, one vote. And remember, I think it was the first election when Trump beat Hillary Clinton, and it turned out that a lot of guys talking to pollsters are wiser than them. He said, I'm voting for Hillary Clinton because he didn't want to say they're voting for Trump, right?
Remember
because
that?
Their wife was there. So I think a lot of people are, Yeah,
I bring this up only because let's say he does or were to become leader of the CAQ, and we're heading into an election with him. Based on what I heard. And he wanted he said this when he first announced he'd be running, right? He wanted to reach out and have dialogue with English-speaking Quebecers.
Yeah.
And I just,
Absolutely.
You kind of think, okay, That sounds great. Let's see what the details are. At the end of the day, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
He offered
Don't worry
nothing.
It ain't going to happen. He's not going to talk to you. If you're lucky, he's not going to talk to you. And he's not going to talk about you. Because that's the way things work here in Quebec. Certainly, with people from the Parti Québécois and from the Coalition Avenir Québec. That I'm sorry, the record is there.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll see what happens. But I got to tell you as well. I'm not buying into this. Oh, it'll be a world of difference with Christiane Fréchette. I'm not entirely sure of that, bud. I mean, she's part of the CAQ, and there's a lot of things with the CAQ that people that apparently she doesn't like or didn't like, but she's still there. So we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, don't wait till the ballots are counted before you start making predictions about the CAQ.
I will ask the question nonetheless. Jim, thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm Dylan Playfair.
And I'm Tyler Smith.
We're putting loneliness in the penalty box by talking to some of our favorite athletes about the importance of friendship.
This is Bromance.
Bromance is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers, proudly Canadian-owned and operated. Charm has been part of your love stories and bromances for over 50 years. And you can find Bromance on the iHeartRadio network or wherever you get your podcasts.